Hello and welcome once again to Coaching with 80. Well, as you know that we are covering the interview series. So far I'm sure by now you would have seen the first, second, third series about the pre, during and post interview preparation. And now I'm going to take you a little deeper in terms of how to conduct the interview from the questioning point of view. I think this is one of the most critical part of the interview process, because if you are able to ask the right questions and if you can understand the sequence of the question, you can drive out the best information out of the candidate, because your goal is to hire the best candidate for your organization, for your department, so that you can maximize the results. But very often it is also seen that when people are not aware about how to take interview, how to take ask questions, they tend to think that they can ask as many questions as possible, or they ask very minimal amount of questions. But the point is that, are you asking the right question to drive out from the competency that you have already mapped for that particular role? Now, if you can ask those questions, you can drive out a lot of information that will give you a lot of insights about the individual, and that will help you to take the decision whether this candidate is fit or he is not fit. So let's go into the questioning part, and how we can drive those questions out of those competencies would be a very important and interesting thing to watch. And that is how these questions can help. Another very important point that I want to tell you, that whenever you are planning for an interview, the amount of questions that you are going to ask, always think about asking open questions from where you can get a lot of insights and information from the person. Because the more you will ask questions related to situations of something that has happened in the past, you will get to know a lot of insights, that how that person was thinking at that time, what he was behaving at that time, because past actions are the predictor of future actions. So let's understand that in greater detail. And if you have seen the first part of the competency mapping, I had shared these sets of competencies on the behavioral competencies. And from here, I'm going to take one or two competencies to give you an example that how to drive questions out of them. Now, the number one point that the question that I have derived out of is for the competency of decisiveness, because that's very important to understand that whether the person has a power to take decisions, can he take quick decisions, can he decide fast. So look at the question. Do you consider yourself to be thoughtful, analytical, or do you usually make up your mind fast? So we are forcing that person to think about, does he apply his mind, does he spend some time, or does he take decisions on the go? And that's the time you need to pay attention to, the time he has taken to respond. If he responds immediately, that means that he goes with the flow. And if he takes some more time, think about the answer, that means he applies some thoughtfulness, some mindfulness, and analyze before responding. So that's the way you can drive out the competencies, the way people respond. Look at the next question. What was the last major problem that you were confronted with? What action did you take on it? Now, in this question, the best and the tricky part is he has to think about the last major problem. Now, last major problem has to be very recent, and it has to be a major problem. Now, is he giving an example of a minor one, which is very trivial? Then probably he is not the right candidate, because he is not able to think. But I'm saying only from this competency point of view, not I'm ruling out that the candidate is not good, but you have to observe these minor and small things when you are deciding. Let's look at the second competency, that is leadership. Now let's understand some questions what I have framed. In your present job, what approach do you take to get your people together to establish a common approach to a problem? So we are trying to ask this gentleman that how you bring a common approach within your team. How do you unite your team towards a particular decision that you have to make? Now that clearly requires leadership skills. So in these questions, when we are trying to judge the competency, we will not straight away ask, okay, tell me, what do you understand by leadership? What is leadership? Define leadership. Now, these are not the question to be asked, because they will not drive you anything, because you are not checking the theory. You have to check whether from the past experiences, can he share something on that? And that's the precise reason when you are asking him on certain situation. Let's look at the second one. What specifically do you do to set an example for your employees? Now, very clearly, it shows that you have to do as a leader something out of the box, something out of the way. You have to go and deliver your results in such a way that people look up to you. That is called inspirational leadership. So, is he able to come out with some examples like this? This is what precisely you need to look at. Now, let's go a little more deeper and look at some of these managerial competencies again that I have shared in the last slide, and I'm going to now take you deeper into some of the questions that I have tried for managerial competencies. Now, innovation and creativity. Now, look at the question. Can you think of a problem you have encountered when the old situations didn't work and when you came up with the new solutions? Very, very clearly, we are saying when the routine ways of doing things were not working, what did you think out of the box? So, whether he is able to produce some good examples will be an indicator that he can think beyond. Next, what kind of problems have people recently called on you to solve? Which means that whether, first of all, people are approaching him, and if they're approaching him, it clearly shows that he can think out of the box. That's an indication. Second is, tell me what have you advised. Now, this is where what kind of solutions that he is suggesting would be an indicator that he can think out of the box or not, because the relevance of the example, the strength of the example that he's going to take will decide a lot. Now let's go and understand on another competency called self-assessment. Let's take another question. What kind of things do you feel most confident in doing? Now, this shows about your capability level. Now, can I think about certain things that I have recently worked upon and where I don't have to take effort? Because the areas where I have to take effort are my improvement areas. So my areas of strength are those where I don't have to even think. Like, for example, I drive a car, or I can speak in public with 100 people standing in front of me, is something I don't have to take an effort. So that is something that has to come out very clearly in these answers. Another question, can you describe for me a difficult obstacle you had to overcome? How did you handle it? How do you feel this experience affected your personality or ability? Now, clearly, we are asking him to tell me about what does he or she feels about himself. Does his or her self-esteem is on a higher note or it is on a lower note? Because that's the point. He has to think about a situation and give you a detailed answer. This is what exactly competency-based interviews or behavioral-based interviews bring out. Now, I come to the second part of questioning. Now, this is for people manager role. Now, if you are applying for a people manager role, or if you are hiring a person who is into people manager role, this questions you have to define and understand very clearly. Now, I have taken for the benefit of understanding two competencies and out of the list that I'm sharing with you. And this is one of the competency that I want to share today is on leadership. So here I have defined what is leadership. Leadership, it clearly shows that motivates and empowers others in order to accomplish individual, team, and organizational objective. Now, very simply, we have to look at whether a person in his current role as a manager, as a people manager, is he able to exhibit these competencies or not? So questions are, what does leadership mean to you and to your team? Now, you may say that I'm asking him a straight question like, what is leadership? But now look at the follow-up questions that are going to come. How do you describe your approach in leading others? Now, the question is twisted. Now, he has to give us a detailed example about how does he describe his leadership approach. Number two, has it changed over time? Now, you have to think because the question is twisted a lot. Have you received feedback on your leadership style recently? What kind of feedback was it? Was it good? What was any improvement areas have been told to you? Now, all these things will bring out a lot of insights about his leadership process, his leadership thinking. Is he exhibiting those things in his role or not? Let's look at the second competency in a people manager role, strategic direction. I think this is one of the most often, if you are a people manager, this would be the most talked about point. Are you strategic or not? Are you operational or are you strategic? So what strategic means is that demonstrates a broad-based view of issues, events, and activities, and a perception of their long-term impact, bigger picture implications. So it shows that, can you think little beyond what is the plan going to be to achieve the vision of the leadership? So let's see what kind of questions can come. Tell me about a recent time when you took a broad view of your own work, and why was this necessary? How useful was this approach? What wider implications became apparent? And then give me an example of a time when you could have taken a more long-term view. Why was this important? What was the outcome? And what did you learn out of it? Now, when you ask these questions in a greater detail, you are actually getting a lot of insights that whether that person is thinking on those lines or not, whether he has those examples or not, whether he has lived those situations or not. And if yes, if he's able to come out with these examples and answers, you can start making up your mind that yes, is he there for my role or not? Well, friends, there's a long list of questions that can come out, but that also depends upon that which competency is suitable for that role and what exactly you are doing. And a lot of people mistake that without preparation, they just come out with an array of questions which they might have heard through their bosses or somewhere else, and they just keep asking question after question after question, and then the other person sitting on the other side, either he gets bored or he gets confused that what exactly the interviewer is asking and he wants to drag out. And many a times I have seen the selection is generally based on the impressions that I'm carrying while I'm sitting. So you always remember, if you are conducting a behavioral based interview, it has to be always mind over matter, which means that how a person thinks, how a person behaves, how a person acts is going to be the deciding factor for his future role that is going to be an asset for you. So while you are doing a competency based interview or a behavioral based interview, you need to get dig deeper to know all these facts. So I hope you would have found this useful and you are going to try out new questions for yourself. Thanks for watching once again, and I'll come back again with another series of questions and some new techniques. So keep watching this channel, Coaching with AD, and do subscribe and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.